Hello everyone, we continue our series about 100 brachot, and if you want to be careful to make sure 100 brachot are said by you during a specific day, here's the question: when does the day begin? We have in Judaism two models. Either the day begins at night, like Shabbos and Yom Tov begin at night, or the day begins in the morning, like we have in the Beis HaMikdash. The Shut Piskei Tshuva, written by Rabbi Avraham Petrovkovsky, his years 1900 to 1941. He unfortunately was killed in the ghetto of Lodz. He quotes the sefer called Over Orach, written by the father-in-law of Rav Kook, Rav Eliyahu David Rabinovitz Teumim, known as the Aderet, his years 1845 to 1905. That there's a suffix about this simply because the Rishonim are not clear. The Rambam says, Chayav Adam levarech mea brachot ben hayom vehalayla. Clearly the Rambam says you have to say 100 brachot between the day and the night, connoting that the day begins in the morning. However, that's at the end of the 7th chapter of Hilchot Tefillah, of the Laws of Prayer. At the beginning of that chapter, the Rambam goes and says all the brachot we say every day. And he starts with the bracha you say at night before Kriyat Shema, called Birkat HaMapil. And then he goes on to say when you get up in the morning, you say this and you say that, clearly saying that the day, from his perspective, began at night. And then, after all of that, he says you're supposed to make these brachot ben hayom v'halayla. And then he says, Mahin mea ha-brachot, what are the 100 brachot? Elu kaf gimel brachot, shemaninu beperek zeh. These are the 23 brachot that I just mentioned. Well, what he just mentioned started at night, not during the day. That's suffix number one. Suffix number two of the Sefer Ha'itim, another one of the Rishonim. On the one hand says you have to make up Mea Brachot, and therefore he says on Erev Shabbos you're missing 11 by Ma'ariv. Why are you only missing 11 by Ma'ariv? Because the day began in the morning. You daven Shachris with its 19 blessings. You daven Mincha with its 19 blessings. By Ma'ariv you're only going to daven 7, so you're missing 11. Clearly saying that the day begins in the morning. On the other hand, the Sefer Ha'itim says, maybe I could see it the other way. Maybe Chashiv Nami Derev Shabbos, Ba'adei Shabbos. Maybe I have to see Friday night as a package deal with Shabbos, so that the day for 100 brachot begins at night, not during the day. And therefore, if that is the case, the nafkamina would be Havdalah. Because if the day begins at night, Havdalah is after Shabbos. If the day begins in the morning, Havdalah could be counted. In his words, the Havdalah lav micheshbon brachos de Shabbos, ela mibirkat dechad de Shabbatu. If the day begins at night before Friday night, then Havdalah is already for Sunday. But if the day begins in the morning, Shabbos morning, just like it began Friday morning, then Havdalah could be counted for your 100 brachot on Shabbos. Well, indeed, the poskim disagree on this point. And it's not a clear picture because when the Rishonim bring it, most of the time they're saying you have to make 100 brachot. And here's a brachot you say all the time. Some of them begin at night, some of them begin in the morning with their lists. Obviously, those that begin at night think that you start counting at night. And those that begin in the morning obviously think that you begin in the morning. So, for example, the Rokeach says that you have to make 100 brachos, and he starts with Anatilat Yadayim in the morning, clearly saying that you start counting in the morning. The Sefer HaMamig says you have to count 100 brachos, and he starts with the 18 before Baruch She'amar, clearly starting from the morning. Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, the Smag says there's 25 brachot until Yishtabach, which is a starting point, again inferring from his words that he begins in the morning. On the other hand, Beit Joseph brings this law. He starts at night, and therefore, obviously you start at night. And then he goes on to say, just in case you don't know my opinion, Shabbos chasirim lamed vav brachot. On Shabbos you're missing 36 brachot, because each Amida is shy 12 blessings. So if you add it up, 12 plus 12 plus 12 equals 36. From this perspective, he obviously starts Friday night. Magen Avraham quotes him saying explicitly that Kiddush could be counted for your Shabbos day 100 brachos, and he even makes a cheshbon how many brachos there are at Kiddush, because Borei Priya Geffen, Mekadesh Shabbos, and Borei Priya Geffen Shabbos morning, you got 3. The Yabetz, Rabbi Yaakov Hemden, also says, you start counting from Ma'ariv, and he goes on to say, Motzei Shabbos, you have to do a Melava Malka. The Melava Malka already, the Melava Malka where you wash, perhaps, and you eat bread, and then you bench. So you got 4 brachos in Birkat HaMazon, 2 brachos before you started your Melava Malka and Tilat Yadayim and HaMotzi. All together, 6 brachot. That's for Sunday, which means that you start from the morning. And following suit, the Mishnah Berurah indeed says that each day we count 100 brachos, and he starts with Hamapil, what we say at night, clearly starting at night. So the poskim obviously have a disagreement as to do you start at night or do you start in the morning. On the one hand, at the Beis HaMikdash, we started in the morning, and many of our tefillot, definitely for the times of tefillot, that are counted for the 100 are patterned around the Beis HaMikdash. On the other hand, most Jewish days begin at night. So Rabbi Tzal Stern in his Shus B'Tzel HaChochma says, Yeshimanot ad erev k'bechol mitzvot Torah. Indeed, you have to count from the night, just like you do in Judaism. The day begins at night, and therefore Shabbos is a package deal. You have 36 brachot shy because of only 7 brachot in the Shmoneh Esrei, taking out 12. Well, if that's the case, you start at night. So why is it all these poskim started to count during the day? They said because of what the Yerushalmi and the Tosefta said. The Yerushalmi says, "En lacha adam Yisrael she'ino oseh mea mitzvot b'chol yom." It started with Shema and Shachris. So as he says, they continued that. Halachically, you start at night. On the other hand, the Shuta Teret Pas, written by Rab Zivichi, I don't know who he is. All I know is he wrote an amazing tshuva about this, and he was born in 1950. He writes that he believes that the day begins in the morning. So why did the Rambam start with Hamapil? He says, I'll tell you why. Rambam was organized. He rewrote the entire Gemara to make it organized. Well, if the Rambam has to start with the first bracha you say at night, what is the first bracha you say at night? Baruch atah Hashem ha'ma'ariv ha'ravim. The first bracha before the 2 brachos before Shema at Ma'ariv. So the Rambam's organized. So he says, I'm going to start counting for you the brachot. From there, he started from Hamapil, because he wanted to be organized. Hamapil is on its own. And then he said, after Hamapil comes the brachos of Shachris, together with the brachos of Ma'ariv you've already said last night. In other words, it's just an organizational skill. The Rambam is clear. Between the day and night, the day begins in the morning for this mitzvah. So, be very careful about this. Let's end with the way we began. The Piskei Tshuva, who perished in the Lodz ghetto, indeed says, Nistapakti, I really don't know. If the day begins at night, or the count begins in the morning, and there are contradictions in the words of the Rishonim. So if you want to be careful with this, you should be machmir on both sides. You should count from the night, and you should count from the day. There is no conclusion, and usually on a regular day, you won't come up short anyway.